Mike carried his limp sister through her bedroom doorway. She'd fallen into a deep sleep in the car, and she snored most of the way home. He thought she might wake up when he lifted her out of the car, but she was totally out of it. I guess playing with the animatronics is exhausting, Mike thought as he gently placed Abby in her bed. Mike was trying to keep his mood light, but he wasn't really feeling it. The truth was that he was thoroughly frazzled by the night's events. Mike pulled Abby's bright red blanket up her shoulders. He watched her chest rise and fall slowly for a few seconds. Then he turned and started toward the door. As Mike passed Abby's desk, his glance landed on a pile of drawings. He hesitated, and then he stepped over to pick them up. Mike usually didn't pay a lot of attention to what Abby drew. Yes, the drawings. She's seen the drawings she's done that included him, but he hadn't looked at anything she's drawn lately. Given what had happened at Freddy's, Mike had a sudden feeling that he should see what his sister's been up to. Expecting to see Abby's versions of the animatronics at Freddy's, Mike flipped through the drawings and he nearly stopped them. He nearly dropped them. Mike couldn't believe what he was seeing. Abby's drawings had improved a lot over the last year. She was no fiasco, but what she drew was usually recognizable. The drawings Mike held in his hands were clearly recognizable. He knew exactly what he was looking at. Mike held in his hand a whole series of drawings that has Abby playing with the children from his dreams, and one of them. Mike pulled the fourth drawing from the pile. Frowning at it, he placed the others back on Abby's desk. He folded up the drawing he'd taken and put it in his pocket. At the time dinner rolled around, Mike felt like a limp noodle. After he put Abby to bed, he tried to sleep himself. Visions of Abby's drawings, however, kept Mike awake. He was only able to get a few snatches of dreamless sleeps. He finally given up and tried to jumpstart his body with his unusual regime of push-ups. The exercise had woken him up enough for it to be functional, but he still dragged all day. All day, Mike tried on and off to get a hold of Max. Why hadn't she flanked on him? Sure, he hadn't paid her, but it wasn't like it's not like her to ignore him. Somehow Mike made it through the day. He even put together a meal, grilled cheese and sandwich and canned tomato soup. And now, shockingly, Abby was eating it. Watching Abby blow through her sandwich, Mike leaned back in his seat and spun his spoon around and around the kitchen table. Pleased with his sister's appetite, Mike inhaled a tang of soup and cheddar cheese he put in the sandwich, and he tried to relax, but the thoughts in his brain were just too much of fickle with thorns. Abby finished the sandwich and raised her soup bowl with both hands. She slurped down the soup and put down the bowl. She let out a loud burp. Giving Mike the sideways glance, she giggled and said, "Excuse me." Mike put his elbows on the table. "Abby, we need to talk." Clearly noticing Mike's serious tone, Abby frowned. "I said excuse me." Mike waved a hand. "Not about that." He leaned forward. "You know what happened last night isn't normal, right?" Abby wiped the soup mustache from her face. "I'm not stupid, Mike." "No, you're not." Mike chewed on the inside of his cheek. "How to word this? So, the machines," Mike began. "My friends," Abby corrected. "Sorry, your friends," Mike corrected himself. Are they ghosts?" Okay, Mike thought. That was easier than expected. "Yeah," he said. Abby tilted her head and gave Mike a way to catch on, Captain Obvious look. "Of course," she said. "How else would they make the robots move?" Mike nodded. "So they're kids, then, like you?" Abby nodded and then shook her head. "They're younger," she clarified. "And they explained to you how they got to be the way they are now?" Mike asked. Abby dropped her gaze to her empty her shoulders and hands. "They don't like to talk about it." Abby lifted her head. She pushed her bowl towards Mike. "Can I have more soup?" Almost glad for the distraction, Mike took the bowl and jumped up. "Sure." Mike stepped to the stove. A half-empty pot of soup sat on one of the burners. He knew the soup was cold, so he turned the burner, though. He thought he was doing a very good job of acting like he was having a perfectly ordinary conversation with his 10-year-old sister. Doesn't everyone talk about ghosts at the dinner table? Mike's patient, calm demeanor wasn't as genuine as Abby's probably thought it was. Inside, his adrenaline glands were in overdrive. Mike had an agenda, but he thought he had to get it in a roundabout way. Mike picked up the wooden spoon and stirred the soup as it started to steam a little. "You know, we used to have a brother, right?" He asked Abby without turning around. "Garrett? I don't talk about him." "Neither did Mom and Dad," Abby said. Mike blinked. He was surprised Abby remembered. She never spoke about their parents. She'd only been 3 when their mom had died and their dad had left. It was hard for them, Mike said. Hard for me, too. Mike turned away from the stove and dug into his pocket. He pulled out a folded-up drawing he tucked away earlier that day. Mike handed the folded drawing to Abby. Can you explain this to me? Abby spread open the drawing on the table. She looked down at Mike. At it. Mike didn't need to look at it again. He knew it was a drawing of a black car with a blurry-faced child, a child clenching on an orange toy airplane in the back window. Abby looked at Mike, her face tight. She pressed her lips together and blinked several times, a classic "you caught me" look. Do you know what that is? Mike retook his seat and pointed at the drawing. Abby didn't speak. She studied the table. I'm not mad at you, Abby, Mike said. I just want to know. Another few seconds passed, then Abby said, It's when Garrett gets taken. Mike leaned forward. Little fireworks of excitement were sizzling through his whole body. Who told you about this, Abby? More silence. Was it the little boy with the blonde hair? Mike pushed. Abby nodded. I don't know his name. But he's one of your friends? Mike asked. Yes. And when did you meet them? Before Abby could answer, a spinning fizzle came from the pot stove. Mike looked over to see the soup boiling over. He leaped up and shifted to the pot with a cold burner. He turned off the stove. Mike turned back to Abby. She had picked up her napkins and was tearing into the little pieces, clearly upset. Mike crouched down next to her. He put her hand on the drawing. Abby, he said to the gentlest voice he could muster, this is very important. Did the blonde boy ever say anything about the man who was driving the black car? Mike tapped the car of the drawing. Please think hard. Abby shook her head. No, he didn't. Abby looked up in front at Mike. He knew he hadn't hidden his disappointment, but Abby began. Yes. Can I ask him? Abby asked. Mike let out a long pent-up breath. This is where he's been heading all along. He smiled. I really appreciate it if you do. Vanessa looked at her watch as she let Freddy's front doors clang shut beyond her. It wouldn't be long before Mike got here. Vanessa glanced around the empty lobby. The walls still had gaping holes, and all the poster frames were barred with glass, but the floor has been swept up. Mike was busy last night, she thought. Vanessa's boots thumped on the floor as she strode forward, heading through the archway into the dining room. She looked around and nodded in satisfaction. He cleaned up in here, too. She glanced across the room and clocked her head. He left the stage curtains open. Strange. She eyed the animatronics. They were poised in show-ready positions, frozen on the stage as if mid-performance. Okay, Vanessa thought. Vanessa turned away from the stage, walking slowly towards the dining room right hall. Her gaze locked on the children's drawings that covered the wall. Actually, her gaze locked on just one of the drawings. It was one she always had to revisit, the one that called to her like a siren's song. Vanessa stepped up in front of the central drawing to the wall. She stared at the image of the yellow rabbit and the 5 smiling children. She felt the blood drain from her face, as it always did when she looked at the drawing. She shivered. Mike's car rattled up next to the black and white police cruiser parked in the spot he's been using. Near the pizzeria's front door, he stared at the police car and then looked at the pizzeria. He frowned. What's she doing here? He wondered. The cop lady's here, Abby said. Vanessa. Mike nodded but didn't respond. He was still wondering why Vanessa was here. My friends talk about her sometimes, Abby said. Surprised, Mike turned around and looked at Abby. What did they say? Abby shrugged. That she's nice. Mike looked back at Vanessa's cruiser. He liked Vanessa, but he wasn't so sure he liked that she was here now. Mike returned his attention to Abby. If I told you to wait in the car, would you? He asked. Abby rolled her eyes. Probably not. At least she's honest, he thought. He sighed and opened his car door, but before he could throw a leg out in the car, Abby had flung the door open, bounded out the car, and was racing to Freddy's entrance. Abby, wait! The night sky was a quilt of black and gray, so tightly tucked in that the moon couldn't peek out at all. The building's lights were out, so the legion of walking dead or angry robots could have been lurking, and Mike couldn't have seen them. Mike hustled to grab Abby's things in his own backpack. He locked up the car and rushed after his sister. You can't do that, Mike huffed when he caught up to her. It's not safe. Abby was hopping from one foot to the other in front of the locked door. She threw Mike a look that made him feel like a hubby-dubby. He gave in and unlocked the door. As soon as the door was open, Abby brushed past Mike and ran through the lobby. She scrambled towards the archway. I'm back, she called as she breezed in the dining room. The front door of Freddy's clanked shut. Mike, still not happy with Abby converting to giant robots or ghosts, dropped his backpack and Abby's things and trotted after his sister. Abby, wait up! Mike reached the archway just in time to watch Abby wave at Vanessa, who stared near the walls of children's drawing. Hey, Vanessa! Abby sang out. Vanessa, Mike noted, didn't look at least bit surprised to see Abby. Vanessa waved at his sister back as she darted towards the stage, where the animatronics were coloring as stiff as statues. Mike, torn apart his need to talk to Vanessa and his imperative to keep Abby safe, hesitated in the middle of the dining room. He was, therefore, close enough to see Vanessa's reaction when the animatronics stopped being statues and become comfortably furry robots making awkward attempts to play like children. Abby scrambled up to the stage and greeted her friends as Vanessa ambled over to stand next to Mike. Vanessa said nothing, and neither did he. They both just watched Abby and the animatronics in silence. Giggling, Abby poked Chica in the middle of her bib and shouted, Tag, you're it! Chica opened her beak in a big grin and graciously trotted off behind the half-open stage curtains. Abby and the others watched for a few seconds and started chasing the chick. It's like watching a bunch of Frankenstein monsters at play, Mike thought. Vanessa elbowed Mike lightly. Hey, Mike. Mike kept his gaze on the animatronics antics on the stage. Vanessa? He responded. They both continued looking straight ahead. Mike kept his face blank, primarily because he hadn't decided which was battling emotion was going to win. I guess you'll figure it out, Vanessa said. Mike finally turned towards her. He shot her a "ya think" look. Vanessa was giving him a half smile, but her gaze was empty. He couldn't tell what was she feeling anymore, that he couldn't figure out his own emotions. You mean, did I figure out that there were ghost children possessing giant robot animals? Mike asked. Yeah, thanks so much for the heads up on that. Technically, Vanessa said, they're animatronics, not robots. A squeal of laughter turned them both towards the stage. Apparently the tag game was over. Bonnie was giving Abby a piggyback ride. Mike really wanted to get Abby off the giant robot rabbit. Every protector instinct in his body was screaming no, but Abby was clearly thrilled. He turned back to Vanessa. What are you doing here? Vanessa pursed her lips. I did say I'd check on you. She nodded towards Abby. So what's she's doing here, Mike? Can't reach my babysitter. Vanessa's half smile had disappeared. She replaced it with her cop stare, which was dialed up to 11. Hey, you guys? Abby called. We need help.